about the first wife of legendary country music star Johnny Cash is available for anyone to stream.
She was a very private person and was not prepared.
Before she passed, Johnny Cash's first wife finally spoke, and what she revealed left even lifelong fans speechless. For decades, Vivian stayed silent while the world romanticized his passionate love story with June Carter. But long before the spotlight, she was the woman beside him, raising 4 daughters alone while watching her private heartbreak become public history. No one prepared her for what fame would do. And what she finally confessed before her death didn't just challenge the legend, it shattered it. She never wanted to tell this story, but once she did, nothing about Johnny Cash's legacy would ever sound the same again. The forgotten wife who witnessed it all. For many years, she was solely known to those who knew her as the wife who had been abandoned. During the time that Johnny Cash and June Carter were becoming the most famous figures in country music, Vivian Cash was living in the background and raising her 4 daughters by herself in California. She observed from a distance as people all over the world celebrated the love tale of Johnny and June. Vivian, on the other hand, was aware of a particular aspect of the story that no one else was aware of. The true narrative begins a very long time before June Carter ever steps foot on the scene. A roller skating rink in San Antonio, Texas, was the location where it all started on July 18, 1951. It was while Vivian Liberto was just a teenager that she first met Johnny Cash, a young man who was serving in the Air Force. He had not yet achieved fame. He was just a regular man who was not particularly good at skating with his skates. On the other hand, rather than being concerned about falling, he sings along with the music that is playing in the rink. That night was truly remarkable. Johnny made the request to Vivian to skate with him right before the rink closed for the night. He struggled to maintain his balance while skating and was wobbly on his skates. However, the sound of his singing brought a smile to her face. When a song by Rosemary Clooney began to play, Johnny began to softly sing the lyrics of the song. Additionally, Vivian's heart was warmed in a way that she had never experienced before because of something in his voice. Their affection increased rapidly over time. Johnny had to go to Germany with the Air Force just 3 weeks after they had first interacted with each other. However, before his departure, he carved the phrase, "Johnny loves Vivian," into a bench. The two of them made a commitment to write letters to one another, and they did not break that pledge. What transpired was a love tale that was told through thousands of letters, which eventually filled the pages of Vivian's book regarding their long-distance relationship. Over the course of 3 years, Johnny communicated his thoughts and emotions to her. He wrote to her nearly every day. The letters he wrote were filled with love, loneliness, and the humorous charm that would one day make him come to be. However, even in those early letters, there were indications of conflict, things that Vivian was the only one who could comprehend. Johnny's writings included references to excessive drinking and spending time with other ladies. Every time, he made a pledge to stop, and each time, Vivian was able to forgive him because she had faith in the love that they shared. The fact that the young airman she fell in love with would go on to become one of the most famous celebrities in the world was completely unknown to Vivian. In addition, she never in her wildest dreams dreamed that the tender love story contained in those handwritten letters would one day cause her heart to be broken in ways that she could not have anticipated. She watched him rise to greatness and fall into darkness, holding a truth that the public would not hear for decades. What she saw in those years was never meant to be told, until now. When love met stardom, and everything changed. Johnny Cash arrived back in the United States from Germany on July 4, 1954. And Vivian's world was altered irrevocably. She and her family headed to the West Memphis airport in order to see him, and when she saw him going towards her, she didn't need to say anything. Suddenly, I found myself falling into his arms. He snatched me up in his arms, and then we shared a passionate kiss, she wrote. They tied the knot at St. Anne's Catholic Church in San Antonio, Texas, 1 month later on August 7th. The man who had written her love letters was going to be Vivian's husband. He was the love of her life. She had no notion that she was also married to another person at the time. She had no notion that she would one day become one of the most renowned people in the United States. At start, Johnny was simply a typical man who was attempting to make a livelihood for himself. They relocated to Memphis, where he found work selling home appliances door to door. He detested going door to door and trying to persuade folks to purchase washing machines and refrigerators. On the other hand, Johnny had more ambitious goals, and those goals were about to be realized in ways that would completely transform everything. Johnny was introduced to his buddies Marshall Grant and Luther Perkins by his brother Roy. Together, they came to the realization that they had a mutual affection for the person they referred to as Hillbilly Vivian. In the beginning, they would come together and play for the sole purpose of having fun. On the other hand, Johnny's voice possessed a unique quality that could not be overlooked. Then came what Vivian referred to as the 1 hour that would change everything. Johnny tried out for Sam Phillips at Sun Records, the same label that was responsible for Elvis Presley's rise to fame. When Johnny arrived at his house on that particular day, he was so excited that he was literally jumping off the walls. Vivian, who was expecting their first child, Roseanne, was the one who heard him say, "Baby, we're cutting a record." Cry, Cry, Cry was the name of the song that they recorded, which Johnny had composed in a span of only 15 minutes. In an instant, Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two became the newest performers to be signed to Sun Records. They joined a roster that already included the likes of Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Elvis Presley. In her letter, Vivian mentioned that both she and Johnny had a strong fondness for Elvis. He was a wonderful person in every way, and he became a very good friend to me. During those early days, before the fame became too huge, there was still room for friendships and normal relationships. But success brought its own set of challenges. It was the beginning, and with it came the attention of female fans. When Vivian asked Johnny if he had ever been tempted by all of those women who were throwing themselves at him, he responded with a song that would go on to become one of his most well-known tunes. He informed her that he would walk the queue for her. It was that sentence that triggered something imaginative in Johnny's imagination. "I Walk the Line" was conceived as a result of his request to Vivian to jot down lyrics when they were traveling in the car together. It was released in the spring of 1956, about the time that their second daughter, Kathy, was born, and it quickly became a #1 hit, establishing Johnny Cash as a household figure. With recognition came opportunity, and Johnny's new manager, Stu Carnall, was able to persuade him that California was the place where they should be. According to what Vivian wrote, at this time, I simply agreed with everything Johnny wanted to do. To say that I had much of a mind of my own would be an understatement. But as his fame grew, the man she once held in her arms began slipping through her fingers. Every cheering crowd pulled him further away, and every hit song built a wall between them. From Hollywood Promises to Haunted Nights. The Cash family relocated to Encino, California in the summer of 1958, approximately 1 month after the birth of their third daughter, Cindy. It appeared like they were living the American dream when they purchased a home that had once belonged to Johnny Carson. But Vivian saw what she deemed a deadly current under their lively existence, lurking beneath all that achievement. The new beginning she had anticipated was not brought about by her relocation to California. Rather, It was the turning point in Johnny's downward spiral into the destructive behaviors that would plague their marriage and nearly derail the artist's career. Johnny's drinking, which had always played a significant role in his life, and was the initial topic he brought up in those early letters from Germany, started to get worse. Even worse, he began to take medication. Those substances weren't like any old pills. Depending on the situation, they may either keep someone awake for days or put them to sleep entirely. Things that Johnny had sworn would ruin our lives. Things he had really used the terms filthy and dirty in his love letters became his allies. Vivian. The same guy who had previously spoken out against the perils of substance abuse was now a victim of his own words. Perhaps. As a young girl, Cindy Cash recalled hearing her parents yell at one another just once, but there was something else that told the story. No matter how much she fretted or how late she stayed up, Mom never showed us how much she hurt. All he did was remain silent. No, he wouldn't budge. It was also required that we go outdoors if we began to argue. Things were getting worse, but Vivian was growing good at disguising it. It wasn't simply Johnny's conduct that the tablets were altering. They were altering his character. Cindy reflected on the past and remarked that, in hindsight, her father's use of medications had pushed him into a downward spiral. The price was paid, regrettably, by Mom. Things could still improve, according to Vivian. She reasoned that a change of environment may be therapeutic when Johnny proposed they relocate to Casita Springs in Ventura County. Moving to a hillside home above Nye Road was their plan in late summer 1961, just 2 weeks after the birth of their fourth daughter, Tara. This was an attempt by Vivian to curb Johnny's misbehavior, she thought. Wow, she was completely mistaken. Beautifully situated on a hill with what should have been tranquil vistas, the Casita Springs property was anything but. However, rather than serving as a haven, Johnny Cash's most notorious bad boy antics took place there. Everything from medicines to alcohol to binges to arrests. All the while, Vivian was attempting to maintain family unity while raising her 4 young girls. Everything, and I do mean everything, began to come apart not long after we relocated to Casita Springs, Vivian wrote. The couple's marriage was deteriorating from the inside out while Johnny was on tour and becoming more famous. Vivian remained at home and watched everything happen. If only I could have gone on a journey with him instead of staying home to raise my 4 children, things would have turned out differently, Vivian had told her longtime friend Alice Smith. That was something she stated rather frequently. Underneath the mask of the ape, Vivian witnessed Johnny Cash's rise from problematic spouse to full-fledged bad boy of country music when he lived in Casita Springs from 1961 to 1967. Not only did these years give rise to the Man in Black mythology, but they also proved to be the years that ended Vivian's marriage. According to what Vivian wrote, Johnny would often visit Lake Casitas for fishing. It was while there that he penned the initial version of his now famous song, Ring of Fire. However, his activities extended beyond fishing. On occasion, he would even pass out while partying and drinking on his boat. Johnny was fondly remembered by Randy King, the manager of the Lake Casitas Marina. The King said that he used to come here, drink too much, and go crazy. When Johnny got out of hand, people would call for help, and eventually someone would have to come get him. Those missions of rescue were recalled by Cindy Cash. According to her recollection, Mom loaded us all into the car, and we had to find Dad somewhere to go get him. Although she couldn't recall each location they had to visit in order to retrieve their father, she did recall the unease of always worrying about his whereabouts. Johnny continued to act badly even when he was at home. He had become notorious for his habit of playing non-stop Christmas music, much to the dismay of his neighbors. As a former sheriff's deputy, Jeffrey, who was married to Helen Boyd, remembered having to visit Johnny at the Cash residence and ask him to lower the volume. Boyd remarked with a laugh, "I told him to turn it off." He went on to say that Johnny had been really cordial and helpful about the matter. The noise was very loud. Along the creek bed, it resounded everywhere. Johnny, on the other hand, gained notoriety in Ventura County in late June 1965 for inadvertently starting a forest fire that spread over 508 acres near the intersection of Alder Creek and Cespie Creek, just above Fillmore. It took a week and the use of air tanker drops to put out the adobe fire. Assistant Fire Control Officer Carl Rivenberg cited Cash and interviewed him on the spot. On his arrival in the backcountry, he discovered Johnny's beloved pickup truck, Jessie, parked by the side of the road, with Cash sitting close by. Johnny informed Rivenberg that he had gone fishing there and that his truck was the source of the fire. When Cash attempted to start the camper, the heat from the exhaust pipe separating from the silencer caused the grass adjacent to catch fire, as Rivenberg found out after crawling underneath the vehicle. Rivenberg was more concerned about Johnny's health than the fire. According to Rivenberg, he was unable to walk straight and was approximately 3/4 shot. I assumed he was drunk, perhaps under the influence of alcohol, during our talk. I wasn't well versed on dope back then. It occurred to me that he might be high on something. Following the requirement that his insurance companies pay the bill, Cash was left with a charge of around $82,000 from the incident. However, financial considerations were secondary to the fact that Johnny's uncontrollable behavior was becoming more apparent, and that Vivian could do little to halt it. The day the other woman entered the story. Without realizing it at the time, Vivian met the lady who would ultimately cause her marriage to fail in 1958. June Carter was already a household name thanks to her lineage in country music, which had been passed down through the legendary Carter family. But Vivian wrote about how her first impression of the woman was one of concern, that she posed a threat to her family. The source of her emotions remained a mystery to her. This was basically a case of women having an intuitive feeling that something bad was about to happen. Vivian attempted to deny her emotions at first. The words, "I walked the queue for you," which Johnny had told her, had transformed into a song and a vow. Johnny arrived home to the woman he had waited in line for. She was also the mother of his children. However, things started to shift gradually. Johnny began to appear preoccupied and to spend less time at home overall. Bandmates and relatives started making subtle remarks that Vivian picked up on, letting her know that something was happening without anyone saying it out loud. Afterwards, Vivian discovered the invoices, which amounted to June Carter's presents worth thousands of dollars. Her darkest worries had come true at that point. In the subsequent film Walk the Line, Johnny plays the role of the dogged pursuer, while June plays the role of the hesitant one. Except Vivian had a different take on it. The most excruciating part was a confrontation that Vivian detailed in her book that took place behind the scenes. Although she distinctly recalled June's statements, she refrained from mentioning the exact location. "You can call him yours, Vivian." Anne Sharpstein, who assisted Vivian in penning her book, expressed her desire for it to be known that June pursued Johnny. Over the years, that was the source of the majority of her anguish and frustration. Cindy, who was Vivian's daughter, mostly agreed with her mother. Cindy predicted that June would get her father once she was born, and June did just that. To the point when he pursued her again, she was really accessible. It wasn't simply the affair that caused Vivian pain, though. That was when June said in interviews that she was actually taking care of Johnny's girls. Another lady got credit for Vivian's work after she stayed home, gave up her goals, and devoted herself entirely to being a mother. Not only that, but Vivian thought June was making Johnny's addiction worse, rather than better. She asserted that June Carter was an addict and a supplier for Johnny. Nevertheless, June was important in Johnny's recovery from his addiction. Because all three of them have now died, we may never know the whole truth of their relationship. But Vivian's grief was plain to see. For a long time, she saw Johnny and June rise to the top of the country music charts as a pair, and theirs was hailed as a legendary love tale in Hollywood. At the same time, Vivian felt abandoned, like an unimportant cog in Johnny's wheel. The fact that she was formerly his wife was the sole reason she was ever mentioned. As if Johnny's marriage, love, and their 4 daughters were irrelevant, some in Nashville even pretended she had never existed. A love story unravels behind closed doors. When 1966 rolled along, Vivian Cash finally snapped. Everything. The pills, the alcohol, the mystery woman, and the anxiety of constantly worrying about Johnny's whereabouts and potential problems. Everything had gotten to be too much. She was finally finding her voice, the woman who had previously written about how she just went along with Johnny's every whim. She finally had to say something. She was sick of living this way. In the summer of 1966, Vivian sought a divorce from Johnny. She didn't make that choice carelessly. Divorcing one of America's most famous men would be difficult in and of itself, and she had 4 kids to consider. However, remaining Johnny's wife had become an insurmountable task. She hardly recognized the man she had fallen for at the San Antonio roller skating rink. He had vanished. He was altered by the narcotics, the Stardom, and June Carter. By the end of 1967, the divorce had been finalized. As her ex-husband's career reached new heights, Vivian struggled to reconstruct her life as a single mother of 4 daughters. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Vivian didn't crumble. Instead of playing the role of the devastated ex-wife, she immersed herself in the world around her. She volunteered at the county hospital and a Los Angeles home for unwed mothers, and she served as president of the Garden Club of San Buenaventura for 3 terms. Those who had the pleasure of knowing Vivian during this time gushed about her. She was sociable, funny, down-to-earth, and generous. She was now an expert decorator and a natural hostess, always prepared with her signature Afghans and baked goods. While she was establishing her new life, Johnny remained a constant in her mind. Vivian tied the knot again in 1968. She wed police officer Dick Diston, who remained a Ventura resident for many years after the wedding. Roseanne, Kathy, Tara, and Cash are all alums of Ventura's St. Bonaventure High School. Cindy Cash gushed that her mom gave her everything to motherhood. Vivian never, ever brought up Johnny or June in a negative light with their girls, regardless of how much agony Johnny had caused her. However, it was taxing to repress that pain for so long. The news of the divorce didn't reach Vivian's sister Sylvia Fly until after the fact. This was shocking to her because she had been envious of Vivian and Johnny's relationship, viewing it as a model of marital bliss and profound love. Until June and the medications got in the way, I can't tell you which came first. At last, the quiet subsides. After her divorce, Vivian Cash raised her girls in relative obscurity in Ventura, California, and avoided the limelight that had engulfed her marriage for decades. From what anyone could tell, she was an extremely reserved lady who rarely spoke about anyone other than Johnny. Things happened to Vivian over the years that made her silence more difficult to maintain. Walk the Line, which came out in 2005, painted her in a negative light. making her seem like a shrew who ruined Johnny and June's happily ever after. The way Vivian was portrayed in the film was something she was well aware of. Her friends reported that this depiction stung her very much. Staying at home to raise the children and for Johnny's job meant giving up her own goals, and she was the one who had done it all. Instead of being depicted as the person who had loved Johnny the most, she was now being portrayed as the one who stood in the way of happiness. This had an effect on Cindy Cash's mother. As for Johnny's omission from her history, Vivian felt invisible and irritated about it. According to Cindy, her ultimate goal was to be able to speak up. "I walk the line." My Life with Johnny was written by Vivian at that time. Johnny and Anne Sharpstein had written about 10,000 pages of love letters to each other during his time stationed in Germany. They began working through them with co-author Sharpstein. The title of the book was proposed by Vivian's admirers. Love letters sent by Johnny to Vivian made up the bulk of the collection, proving that the two had a genuine and lovely bond, long before June Carter showed up. Sylvia Fly, Vivian's sister, clarified the inclusion of so many letters. Johnny and June were depicted in the film and publications as the love tale of the century. She wanted Johnny to see that she and Johnny were really in love with each other. She yearned to dispel the notion that she was the monster. However, many of her acquaintances were taken aback by the book's last portion, in which she spoke openly about the events involving herself, Johnny, and June. Despite the fact that Vivian had spilled some beans about her life over the years, she was generally quite reserved. Even though Vivian had confided in Helen Boyd Ventura about certain matters, Helen assured Vivian that the tone was not one of animosity or animosity towards her. Additionally, she refrained from criticizing June Carter. The time had come for Vivian to reveal the truth to the world after she had kept her narrative hidden for decades. She spoke the truth at last. When the lights went out and the audience faded, what remained was a woman waiting for a husband who never truly came home. What really happened? Vivian Cash ultimately broke her silence regarding what had actually occurred in her marriage approximately a few months before she passed away in May of 2005 at the age of 71. This occurred shortly after she had completed her manuscript, and what she disclosed was not anything that anyone had anticipated hearing. Johnny Cash had given his blessing to the book project, and it was rumored that he was going to write the introduction before he passed unexpectedly in September of 2003. However, his fingerprints were all over it nonetheless. During the time that they were apart, he had written love letters to Vivian, which made up 75% of the book's total pages. The information contained in these letters demonstrated that Johnny was not the individual who had merely lost his love for his first wife. The letters revealed that Johnny and Vivian had a profound and genuine love for one another that had endured for many years and resulted in the birth of 4 children. On the other hand, Vivian's discovery went beyond merely demonstrating that their love was genuine. Through the publication of her book, she addressed the rumors and myths that had been circulating about her marriage for several decades. She talked about the medicines that had transformed Johnny, about June's involvement in pursuing him, and about the agony of being absent from his history. She also talked about the pills that had changed Johnny. In her writing, she described the experience of losing her husband to another woman as a humiliating and horrible one. On the other hand, she also wrote things about it. Ultimately, she was able to forgive June Carter for the part she played in the dissolution of the marriage. It was not the affair or even the divorce that Vivian regretted the most during her life. It was her failure to exert more effort in order to repair their marriage that she regretted. However, the most significant regret that Vivian had was the fury that she had harbored for all of those years on end. Johnny had departed without ever saying goodbye to her or apologizing to her for the suffering he had given her. He had left without ever saying goodbye. According to what she wrote, "I would have given anything to hear Johnny say that he was sorry." Towards the end of the book, Vivian wrote that she wished her daughters were aware of the extent to which she loved their father more than ever before. In addition, she had recurring dreams in which Johnny was waiting beside a dark automobile, beckoning her to come over and telling her that he wanted to talk to her. Vivian was never able to hear what he had to say because the dreams always ended before she could hear it. Perhaps it was the apology that she had been waiting for all of her life to hear. It's possible that Vivian eventually got the chance to hear those remarks when she passed away on May 24, 2005, as a result of complications experienced during lung cancer surgery. Vivian had wrote, "I hope that one day we will finally be able to finally speak." And it's possible that they did it in the end. The truth behind legends is rarely simple, and sometimes it's the quietest voices that carry the deepest impact. Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Because if one story can rewrite the past, imagine what the next one might uncover. Stay tuned. There's more behind the music than the world ever heard.